Let's recap what we just saw week 12 of the NFL season from a fantasy perspective, offer some dynasty storylines to monitor to watch. You had Jaden Daniels, Pat Mahomes, Tua, Caleb Williams, and Lamar Jackson composing the top five, starting with the quarterback position. And it's great to see Pat Mahomes first and foremost. Have a great day. 28, near 29, approaching 30 points, what we've been used to seeing with the Mahomes the last several seasons. Great for his dynasty value to reimpose a little bit of confidence and some general acceptance that, hey, Pat Mahomes, he's one of your elite quarterback options to have on your dynasty team. He's, of course, capable of putting up numbers any given week. So it's great to see him, first and foremost, headline this week 12. Tua, in a similar vein, he's providing a lot of stability. Maybe what was the most unstable player at the quarterback position a few weeks early in the season. He's providing you some hope, some long-term hope with Tua. Going out there, putting up a great performance against the Patriots, yes, but still, nonetheless, to see Tua operate at this level, it gives you a reminder, hey, with Mike McDaniel, that partnership, he does have the contract after all, and he controls his fate, first and foremost, Tua. It's his life on the line. It's his decision to make. He's got the passion, seemingly, to stay, the drive to stay on the field. And so while he is, you're able to reap the rewards of his play. He's elevating to a good level. Caleb as well. Caleb Williams, man. The 101 in your rookie drafts, the number 1 overall pick. Had some struggles, but it's great to see now Thomas Brown, that second week with him, see some of the magic that we saw at USC on that throw to DeAndre Swift down the sideline. Caleb Williams, awesome to see him perform to a top 4 level, 27 points. Caleb Williams, you just got to hope this is an impetus, and it really gives you, it does instill some hope and some confidence. Like, hey, Caleb Williams, he's the guy that you thought he was, that he is. Caleb Williams, love that. And of course, number 1, not to completely look past, number 1 this week, Jaden Daniels, who went right out pick after Caleb, of course, going for 30. Number 1 on the week. And it wasn't with this insane performance on the ground either. Of course, the fluke of that play against the Cowboys, end of the game, Terry McLaurin, somehow it's the perfect storm of a completion where it was within the holes of the defense, and then he just makes it happen from there. So it could have been a lot different for Jaden Daniels if it wasn't for that play, as far as the fantasy stat line. But you gotta acknowledge it happened, and that's just gonna be some of the positive, some of the negative. That could happen for any given player, any given Sunday. Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, some very good weeks. And hey, speaking of this class, you've got, of course, Drake May at 3, who is in the toughest situation relatively, but is still overcoming. You love what you're seeing there. And Bo Nix as well. The last of the 6 first-round quarterbacks. He is showing you a lot to like. As far as what we had previously to this 24 draft, you had 2023. 2023, comprising, of course, Bryce Young going first. Then you've got CJ at number 2. And, of course, AR. And then, hey, Will Levis. Will Levis all of a sudden showing a little bit of things. I see. Look, call a spade a spade. It's making waves all across Twitter, the X sphere at least. Bryce Young, of course, has been unbelievable. I mean, toe-to-toe with Mahomes. Andy Reid, of course, look, if you want the QB whisperer, you want to get some good you want to get some good praise, make you feel confident as a dynasty, as a fantasy player. I mean, you gotta love what you just heard from Andy Reid. Have to. Bryce Young, keep the momentum going. Was so close. Talking of positive, negative variants, some things that just go right or wrong for a quarterback. Jaden Daniels, obviously, this week, right at the end of the game. Bryce Young, on the other hand, he had so close to a 20. Still QB 12, a top QB1 performance technically could have been a lot better, though, if he just gets one more completion, a drop here and there that just doesn't happen, and all of a sudden you're talking about a 20-plus point week from a Bryce Young. And then right behind him, you had Will Levis. Ironically enough, Bryce Young, Will Levis, C.J. Stroud, 12, 13, 14 this week. Bit of a shakeup. C.J. Stroud, just sophomore slump, so to speak. Not awesome, not what you want to see if you have C.J. Stroud, but I'm not panicking. I'm not panicking nonetheless. I think with C.J. Stroud's struggles, then you see a Jalen Hurts below him at 15 on the week. Jordan Love at 16. Anthony Richardson down at 20. Jared Goff, 23. There were some nice performances, but not a great week overall for the position in terms of depth. And your Superflex formats, it just gives more credence to pause for how you value quarterbacks, how you attack it early, and if you then go often, like I have previously been a subscriber to, early and often at quarterback, try to get your staples of the future, giving you a little bit of pause. Make you think twice. Just mentioned K1, or I guess didn't quite get to QB 2+ territory at QB 25. K1, not so A1 this week. With Arizona, I think they're a team that's just overperformed a little bit in a relatively weaker division. 49ers aren't what they were clearly last year, dealing with some injuries of their own. So Arizona, I think, a slump for the rest of this regular season. Wouldn't put it past. So if you're looking to maybe buy a Kyler low, could be in the midst of it. Could be in the midst of an opportunity. And as well as, look, a Marvin Harrison in that offense we'll get into. Of course, the receiver position coming up soon enough. Speaking of negative, speaking of quarterbacks, situations that just epitomize to degrees the absolute hellscape of quarterback. You've got the Giants situation. Daniel Jones, no more. Tommy DeVito, I guess they want more of him. It's a bit of a tank there move by the That About How We Doing, week 13. Yeah, it's unbelievable. The Giants, I think they certainly wish. I know Joe Shane rumored they wanted to be your Patriots, get your guy in Drake May. They didn't, and now we look where the Giants are. They're going to be picking quarterback at the top of this draft. They're in the tank with a Tommy DeVito plan, starting, rolling him out there. And I really hope they do get a Cam Ward. I hope it's Cam Ward. And I hope at the top as well, I hope Shador goes to Vegas. Those are my convictions for this class. That's what I hope happens. But no guarantee, of course. No guarantee, of course. Jalen Milroe, tough performance. Talk about a rushing upside. Fantasy favorable skill set. We'll see what happens with the CFP. The rankings coming out later tonight. One more regular season week left in college football. State of this 25 class, it just isn't quite the strength that the position has been the last couple years. But nonetheless, still some talent that could provide some sparks, could provide you a lot of value in your fantasy leagues moving forward. But quarterback, talk about a roller coaster position. Still have to make sense of it week by week. Unbelievable. Position that is arguably one of the safer, if not the safest, in terms of opportunity. Running back, let's recap the position. Week 12, Saquon Barkley. My word. Saquon Barkley, 46. Just top 10 performance ever at the position from a sheer yardage perspective. The top ever for an Eagle. My birds. Saquon Barkley, man. Incredible. Really in the MVP conversation. Then you had Josh Jacobs. Talk about free agent. Top of the free agent market this past year. You had Josh Jacobs going to Green Bay. He goes for almost 30. Bucky Irving, 27. Jahmyr Gibbs, right at about 25. Tony Pollard, on pace for a sneaky career year for Tony Pollard there. So we talk about Saquon, you talk about Josh Jacobs, the guys that headline this strong free agent class and are certainly showing out in their new locations. Let's talk about just draft strategy generally. Bucky Irving epitomizes why you draft a running back late in your rookie drafts as sleepers in your late rounds of any fantasy draft year to year. Draft it early, draft RB early. I mean, Saquon, he's certainly given you some confidence, some credence to doing that with his performance this season. But of course, you've got the guys like a CMC. Look, injury, who can really predict? I think what it's more a function of, it's just not being able to bet for any player, any position. One overall type performance, positional performance even. Year to year, there's just no certainty. There's no guarantee. So when you're contemplating drafting running back early, you have to contextualize, especially in Dynasty. All right, who is younger, who has a clear situation, clear role? In this case, Jahmyr Gibbs, him showing up in this top 5, Bijan on bye, of course. And then even, look, headlining draft RB later, draft RB early. Guy like a Devon A-Chain fell in your rookie drafts, but is an incredibly explosive player, fitting incredibly in Miami. What do we have upcoming? How can I put this in perspective? You've got Nash and Genty, who I've been long RB1 truthing for this class, and he is going to be very much warranting top of the rookie class, top 2 round effectively in startups. He just is. He's that caliber of player. So draft RB later, sort of no-brainer. Draft RB early. You just have to ask yourself, what am I expecting of this player? In Dynasty especially, what is their trajectory? Fantasy, redraft, year to year. That just, it's almost anyone's best guess. You almost want to stray away from betting on a player to perform how they just did the year previously, retroactively. I know it's what we crave as humans. You want to just crave for what you just saw, some recency bias, right? I think that just impacts fantasy redraft incredibly so. And you just can't do that. Let's go Joe Mixon. Guy who certainly outperformed his relative draft capital. Not quite in the mix this week. Very much stymied by a Tennessee team who certainly motivated, it would appear. Have not had a great season thus far collectively, but Houston, we have a problem, I guess. I had them as a Super Bowl contender. Picked them even. There's a lot has to go right. A lot has to go right for Houston and Joe Mixon. That offense just not operating that well. Nico Collins back at least, which is good, but something just seems a bit off. Let me know what you guys think of Houston right now. J.K. Dobbins, unfortunately, paid you some dividends this season, but how much relative to where he drafted him, how much can he still deliver the rest of this season, if at all? The injury, brutal for him, hoping for the best, but doesn't look great. Jonathan Taylor. If anybody epitomizes some of the discussion of RB1 elite numbers one year and then a bit of a fall off the next, Jonathan Taylor. It's just been a not great year. Colts, of course, the QB situation, tumult, hope for the best. But Jonathan Taylor, it's just it hasn't quite been there. I don't know. Is health maybe a thing? Colts just that AFC South, man? That division, it's just not a lot going right. You had at least a strong start from a Brian Thomas Jr. I was talking about fantasy, some highs, some positives, but overall, man, the AFC South, it's just been a bit of a mess. It's been a bit of a mess. Jonathan Brooks, talking about RB early, contextualized. He was top of this class, 2024. Goes to Carolina. They get the top 40, the top 50 draft capital. Knew he was recovering from injury. Makes his debut. 2 carries. So really not, they're easing him in. Chuba, of course, gets the extension there in Carolina. Jonathan Brooks, a lesson to a degree with the Trey Benson as well. Who gets propped up relative scarcity with respect to draft capital? Who goes early, right? That day 2 type draft capital. So, I got to push him up. It's really an exercise, especially with the sheer quantity coming up in this upcoming draft class. It's an exercise of who is worth propping up. Ashton Genty, look, in isolation, he is absolutely going to be worth the 101 in your drafts, in your rookie drafts. You've got a host of guys who, beyond him, who could have been very much RB1, and this isn't revisionist, this isn't just hindsight 2020, that would have been right in conversation to be the RB1 this past draft with Jonathan Brooks, with a Trey Benson. But it just goes to show injury and propping somebody up, relative scarcity, position, desirability, and draft capital. You gotta have a critical look at where you're picking as far as running back, and if they're really worth it, just because there's not many. We'll see with this upcoming class. All in all, excited, and I think the true strength that it could be, historic quality and depth, certainly going to warrant some early. But of course, motivate, incentivize you. You see a guy like a Bucky Irving, the season he's been having, a Tyron Tracy emerging, incentivize you to pick him early, pick him often. Wide receiver. Let's talk about some wide receiver. Jordan Addison, Cortland Sutton, Jalen Waddle, DJ Moore, Keenan Allen. Comprising a top 5. Top 5. Voice crack there. A top 5 that is quite new. Not a lot of usual suspects. Minnesota wide receiver 1, exclamation mark, question mark. Jordan Addison showing out, man. Out-targeting a Justin Jefferson. This kind of giving credence to, look, receiver, the sexy position that has been craved for seasons past leading up to this point. But are you really guaranteed production? Or are you really guaranteed with a receiver? You look at volatility, of course, at the quarterback position. They're all dependent, all a function of the quality of targets, of the consistency in targets, the connection that they're forming with the quarterback. And with the Sam Darnold, we'll see how long he's there, but even a Justin Jefferson, a guy who, by a large portion of the fantasy community, is seemingly immune, and even trickling down to a dynasty context, is just immune to weakness or bad performance. But he epitomizes, even he, in reality, isn't a guarantee, isn't a surefire any given week. Mile high connection. Not that type of connection, but Mr. Magic, how you doing? Mile high connection in the sense of Denver, Colorado. You've got Cortland Sutton putting up numbers this year with the Bo Nix. I think that is a very intriguing connection for beyond this year. Bo Nix, performing. Cortland Sutton, the main beneficiary. Really love that. Yeah, Cortland Sutton, man. Just ride the wave. Ride this wave. Miami heating up. Of course, Tua, the thumbnail list, talking about the success the Dolphins have been realizing with a healthy Tua back. It'll be interesting. They've got a Packers Thanksgiving away game coming up. But speaking of which, Packers, who they just played, 49ers, Purdy or Dobbins. Dobbins, we just mentioned him, Mr. Magic, in running back. Unfortunately, it looks, you're assuming the worst or just not good at all for the rest of the season. Harbaugh hasn't really given an update. The comment is no comment or no update. So Dobbins doesn't look great. And then Brock Purdy, seen some weird stuff with Adam Schefter, how he's been tweeting. Expectation, hope. Brock Purdy, he would seem the more likely to give you some playoff points. But with Brock Purdy, there aren't really any definitive updates either. I think with a couple weeks out, still to the playoffs, 2 weeks, Brock Purdy, all things considered, I think would have enough time projecting there to be able to produce for you. But, man, injuries, this is not the time. This is, if you could pick a time where you're not impacted by injuries and you're a playoff team, of course, the worst possible timing. But I guess it's bound to affect us all, bound to affect anybody in some capacity. But not looking great, unfortunately. Not looking great. Pivoting back to Miami, not looking potentially great this week in Green Bay on Thanksgiving for them. So, hey, potential with the trade deadline in your Dynasty League, maybe buy a little bit low on some Miami players if they struggle on Thursday night. On a 5-game win streak, sitting in second, and this is the last thing, cannot afford to lose. Well, I guess, so you might be at risk of losing one of those buys, which really stings if you're in that for so long. You're really making that push. So that sucks. That's unfortunate, but hopefully you're constructed, you have some depth. Because I think if you're for all true contenders, right? Multiple injuries is tough for anybody to overcome. But with quarterback especially, talking about the landscape of the position, there's relatively replaceable production. There really is. Just stream them. Chicago, okay. Talk about some non-usual suspects this season. At receiver, DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, both in the top 5. Really great week. Obviously, Caleb producing for you in a fantasy context. Top 5 as well in his own right. I'm just waiting for this positive trajectory for Rome Odunze. DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, the older guys, at least, doing something, showing out, which it does give me some inspiration. For beyond the season, I don't even know if a Keenan Allen is there. But Chicago, okay, it's great to see Caleb Williams, at least, functioning. The receivers as well. I know DJ Moore was a focus just even recent weeks of some in the community asking me what to make of it. So certainly love that produces a top 4 for you. How you doing, George? Redraft, non-PPR, 9-3. Should you trade Bucky and JSN for Derrick Henry? Bucky and JSN for Derrick Henry. You've got Barkley, you've got Gibbs. Benson, it's tough to really, can't really count him. Barkley and Gibbs, and then Mason. So really, you got Barkley and Gibbs, and then you've got DJ. So great week for you. Marv, D-Hop, Waddle, great. That's a great week for you, and Amari Cooper. George, my gut is no for this. I don't. I'm not thrilled. I mean, you look at Bucky Irving, what he's capable of. You look at what JSN, how he's producing. Derrick Henry, I I don't love how you're in a great place as is. I know you're chasing for the high end production. I don't love it. Let's think. Okay, so if you did it, you would have Barkley, Gibbs, Derrick Henry. So that's a hell of a trio. And then you would be without the JSN, but you would still have a DJ Moore, D Hop, Waddle. But you look at it with JSN, what he's producing for you. I mean, he's almost one of your, if not, I mean, arguably around with what you're working with, one of the safer options, streamable week to week. George, it's a tough one. I mean, I can understand either way. You are in a great power position. And look, your production concentrated in RB with a Saquon, of course, Gibbs, and a Derrick Henry. And then around the edges, look, you started DJ Moore, you started D Hop, and then Waddle, seemingly a safe play. Marv as a rookie, it's been tough. You know what, George? Being in the power position you are, I totally get you wanting to do the trade. It's a really good. It's a really tough one. I approve it either way. No, a bit of a non-answer, but I understand. I understand making the deal. Your rationale, your motivation, I can get behind that because I'm an RB Renaissance truther. Derrick Henry, you see what he's doing. Tough week not getting the touchdown production. And with the Bucky Irving, in fairness to you, look, critically, you can't really guarantee on it any given week. You've got a Rashad White as well. So there's certainly some volatility there with Bucky Irving. I love his long-term outlook, but in the redraft, it's tough to really bank on that. Are you saying to love JSN production, just worried? And okay, non-PPR, of course. You said it. That's something I look past too. It's a non-PPR, so oh yeah, you gotta. Oh my gosh, yeah. George, thanks for telling me that because that totally okay. I'm going non-PPR. I'm just so wired, even at bare minimum half PPR. But you said it. I overlook it. 100%. You got to do this trade then, Derrick Henry, because Bucky. I mean, of course, he's a receiver. Benefits you in that sense. Oh my gosh, yeah. Last week, 76 points, didn't even start. Yeah, George, you got to. Okay, yeah. All for you making this trade then. All for that trade because yeah, okay. Non-PPR, that completely changes yeah. Okay. Completely changes things. But speaking of if you are in a PPR league, though, you love what you see from the receiver position in terms of this past week from an overall depth perspective. Very strong. And we go all top 12 performers, all number one, quote unquote, performances this week. 20 plus. There you go, JSN. Speaking of which, JSN just shy of 20. TD Lamb in there, top 15. And you even have a Calvin Austin there. Interesting. Luis Desjardins. How you doing? Who should you start, David Montgomery or Aaron Jones? 50-50. So Monty, Aaron Jones. Man, with the Lions, I mean, you love Monty just because he's a Detroit Lion at this point. But let's see. So this week, certainly. Okay, so someone's got to be starting Thanksgiving, right? Detroit. Let me just refresh. Detroit. NFL. Still. Detroit. I mean, let's think about it this way. It's a question of a guy who's in a committee, albeit a hell of an offense, or the guy, Aaron Jones, who's in a good offense as well, but is the guy. Detroit Lions. All right. What do we got? So Lions, Bears. That's of course okay. Thursday, and then Vikings. We've got the Falcons. All right, not the no. Oh, I think the schedule I misread. Cardinals. Okay, Cardinals. I at home versus the Cardinals. Yeah, at home versus the Bears. It's a tough one, Luis. I would go Aaron Jones, honestly. I would go Aaron Jones. I don't think it's not look, showing us 20 points certainly doesn't hurt, but I do like a matchup versus the Cardinals. Detroit, Chicago, rivalry game. It's a tough one. But I do like Aaron Jones though. Armin, how you doing? Picked up Abdullah to prevent others from playing him. Now he plays the Chiefs, playing to drop him for McNichols, Westbrook, Akine. That's some smart strategy. That's someone would criticize it, but hey, if it's in the rules or if it's not explicitly spelled out against, I mean, it's strategy. It's a strategy question, and no problem, Luis. Happy to help. McNichols, that's an interesting play. Westbrook, Akine, Disley, Buffalo. So what? And men defense. So I guess Armin, this is a Debo. I'm curious why you listed that. We're talking about Amir Abdullah and McNichols, like RB, streaming. I mean, if this is your lineup, that's kind of tough. If that's a shallow format, that's a tough lineup. If that two defense. But I get if you're saying, just trying it really in terms of honing down matchup week to week. I mean, that's what you have to do in a redraft perspective. You really have. I mean, it's got to be week to week matchup driven. Speaking of traditional Thanksgiving teams, the NFC North division, talking about strong depth at the receiver position, what we just saw. Green Bay continues to be a bit of a conundrum. Is it Jaden Reed? Is it Christian Watson? I know some people love a certain player who shall not be named as, the guy. If you watch film, if you know it, been a very aware of a certain hive out there community, of a certain, fan, certain Green Bay receiver. I've always been a Jaden Reed guy in terms of the Green Bay receiver with respect to his consistent role within the offense. But it's tough. You look at Green Bay; they're one of the top rushing teams. Purely, one of the 5 highest rates in the NFL. So it's tough. You see Josh Jacobs, the week he had. You have to be able to brace for that. And talking about wide receiver ones, look, we've mentioned JSN a little bit earlier already, naturally, with answering George's questions. JSN's emerging there. He's emerging. Talk about on the inverse end, teams that among the teams top 5, top 3 that throw the ball the most. You're talking about Seattle. You're talking about a JSN who's really been breaking out. He's had a steady season. Awesome. What you love to see. JSN, I think, is emerging, in PPR formats at least, to be clear, emerging as a guy there, as the guy. I mean, DK, of course, it's been tough dealing with some injury there for him. There's a little bit of a down year in that sense. But JSN, man, talking about highly rated prospect, tough sledding early on in his career, but then really coming into his own. Talk about the opposite of a sophomore slump, sophomore rebound, really continuing some momentum. Let's talk about wrapping up the receiver talk. 2025, this incoming class, how it factors into the wide receiver landscape here. So it's not sort of inverse to the running back discussion. Wide receiver is not a relative strength in terms of the depth of what we saw in this past 2024 NFL draft. At the top, you've got a few names for sure. I know Ted McMillan has been lighting the world on fire. Incredible season from him. Of course, the discussion, the headache of Travis Hunter. Look, I think it could be a very, 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 very good, elite type of corner. Receiver, though, and the attraction, the money, and the performance, the production he's put out there as well. It's for me, it's a wait and see game with Travis Hunter in particular. And then Luther Burden, a guy I love personally and his skill set translating to the NFL level. PPR format, yards after the catch ability. Where I'm at with the 25 class particularly from a dynasty perspective, and even from a year one type of production. You look at the draft order, whoever, and but Drake May's potential number one, that's who I'm all over. That's who for me would be the number one. The clear, so to speak, the clear-cut number one would be a potential Drake May number one. Love Drake May, and I think the mutual elevation of him and that said receiver, a rookie receiver, a top 5, top 10 receiver in the upcoming draft, that's what I would love to see. Talk about working against the RB renaissance that I do believe we're in. That would be a very interesting debate, discussion. Armin, okay, unsure if you should drop anyone else except for Abdullah. That's your relative bench / expendable. Okay, gotcha. So, Armin, absolutely. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So in this context, I mean, yeah, why would you drop Abdullah right now, Abdullah, what if look, I was a guy who thought Zamir White was going to do some things, just has not at all. Madison, of course, took over, but look, dealing with some injuries in that room, don't drop Abdullah, man. Drop one of the defenses. You got to drop one of the. You can't hold two. I'm never a two defense guy. You got to stream that. Drop, add week to week. So Buffalo, Minnesota. At first and foremost, has to start there. You pick a defense. Your guess is as good as mine. Who talking about defense fantasy analysis. When we talk about they're playing the Cardinals. You got to drop Minnesota, that is. Buffalo, though, you talk about the talent, how they can perform. You got to drop one of the defenses over a Abdullah in a plan to get McNichols. Nick, Sutton, Collins, Bucky. Speaking of the Mile High connection, having Bo Nix, Cortland Sutton, you got to be loving life, Armin. Big beneficiary. Collins, Bucky, CMC, Otten, Kareem. Okay, so that's a good. So okay, yeah, you got a good lineup. That's pretty solid. That's you're getting some production. You're trying to stream more running back. So especially look, it's tough, CMC with his reintegration into the 49ers. Hopefully the wheels get rolling a little bit. I know we've had some discussion. Do they even make the playoffs at this point? 49ers, it's looking like a slippery slope, man. But so running back, yeah, you go try to stream Adam McNichols. Got a cream hunt. See Pacheco, if and when he really reintegrates himself, refigures some of the production he's had. Can't go and cut bait with an Abdullah, Armin. I think that's the last thing you got to be doing. A positional player when we know you're always gonna be able to pick up a defense. Let's wrap up tight end. Tight end. Trey McBride, love to see that 25 point from him. Jonnu Smith, Noah Gray, George Kittle, TJ Hawkinson. So first and foremost, McBride, 15 targets. 15 targets. At least somebody's really showing out. Somebody who's highly thought of coming into the season. Trey McBride. At least he's really showing up, at least this week. I know the touchdown discussion's been a bit of an issue with him. Touchdown still a bit of an issue. It's almost like the Julio Jones conversation of a few years back, where the guy just can't get in the end zone, man. But still, 12 catches on 15 targets, over 130 yards. Trey McBride. Hopefully he can continue this momentum. Hopefully Kittle and Hawkinson can. Some of the usual high performers of the recent tight end landscape the last several seasons. Great to see them perform. But at the same token, look, a drum about the tight end position. Talk about a play on words here. The gray area positionally in fantasy. Got Noah Gray now back-to-back. Solid weeks, back-to-back weeks where he is the tight end one, quote-unquote, in Kansas City when there's a guy like Travis Kelce there. Talk about the guy who's epitomizing, a guy who's been record-breaking in fantasy. It just encapsulates the gray area positionally. It's like, what can you really bank on year to year? Tight end position. Sam Laporta. Talking about back on year to year. He's, talking about sophomore slumping. Some of the top names at quarterback. At quarterback and tight end specifically. Bit of a sophomore slump for Sam Laporta. Just the draft landscape of tight end. Whatever, if you're playing redraft, if you're playing dynasty, it's unless really what I think will ring true for my outlook at the position. Unless it's Brock Bowers, quite frankly, I have no real interest in drafting tight end early. I don't. Unless we're talking a premium, the likes that you've never really seen, like a 5. I know it's a little bit hyperbolic here. Unless it's a 5-point PPR premium or for tight end format. I just don't want to construct teams with tight end being a focus early if it isn't Brock Bowers. That's just my strategy. What do you guys think of the tight end position? How have you fared this season streaming? When you look at a guy like, you're better off, why not just go take a shot on a guy like a Jonnu Smith? Noah Gray, maybe. I mean, even a guy, you look at Austin Hooper, Zach Ertz, Chiga Conquo. Remember him? Him popping up back in the top 10. Just the gray area position. It's not Brock Bowers. Don't really have interest at this point. But that's week 12 roundup. Got Thanksgiving right on the horizon, guys. Thank you all for watching, supporting. Drop a like. Subscribe. We're getting close to 500. We're getting real close. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday if you celebrate. Hopefully you get all the deals you're looking for on Black Friday. Have a great one, guys. Peace.